Welcome back to the Base Talk podcast. I am your host, Jacob Billingsley, owner and founder of Base Sports Performance in Hernando, Mississippi. In today's episode, we are going to discuss the importance of warming up to throw as a pitcher and not just throwing to warm up. All right. Welcome back. So, as I mentioned today, we're going to discuss what pitchers should do before they start throwing, before they start playing catch, and specifically how they should warm up to throw and not just throw to warm up, right? So when we are young, especially like T-ball and elementary school aged, you get to the field with your team, whether it's a practice or whether it's a game or whatever, and the coach, usually rolls out a bucket of balls and says, hey, y'all go play catch, loosen up a little bit. So the kids will grab a ball, they'll grab a partner, they'll go to the left field line or right field line, whichever side they're on, and they'll start playing catch, right? And usually that coach says, gives them 3, 5, 6, 7 minutes, however many minutes it is, just to warm up and to get loose. And, when you're that age, it's probably fine, right? Like they're just moving, they're playing catch, they're having fun. And that's kind of the point of this when you're young, right? It's a sport, it's a game, you're supposed to have fun. But as you get a little bit older, and, you get a little bit, let's just say, you get to that upper middle school age, maybe we're getting to, getting close to high school. That's probably where we want a little bit more of a routine, mainly just for arm health reasons, right? So I'll go through and to kind of explain this. If we're just throwing to warm up and to get loose, there's a lot of things happening there, so we're going from 0 to 100 real quick. And what I mean by that is, the shoulder muscles, the hip muscles, the back, everything, nothing is really specifically ready to start playing catch. So, we haven't really established that range of motion that we're going to need to play catch. So as we start to do that, without warming up and we're just throwing, we're kind of wasting reps, right? So we're really just using those first 15 to 20 throws to loosen the muscles around the arm and the muscles in the back and the muscles in the leg. We're using those first, several throws as the warm up, and we're kind of wasting reps there. So we're adding unwanted volume to the throwing arm that already probably only has a certain amount of volume it can handle anyway, right? So by doing that, one time, maybe not be the biggest deal, but you start to do that 2, 3, 4 times a week over months and years, and now we're adding all kind of additional throws and volume to the arm when the body's not prepped and ready. So really all we're doing there is encouraging unwanted movements. We're teaching the body to move in a way that we do not want as a thrower, as a pitcher, as a baseball player or softball player in general. So we want to make sure that we're going through a proper warm-up. And this is how we structure the warm-ups with all of our athletes at Base Sports Performance. Again, with our, pretty much from middle school all the way up through, our professional athletes, we're taking everybody through, this formula here. So the first one is soft tissue work. Really all that is, you get a baseball or a lacrosse ball or a foam roller or something, that can kind of help you massage a muscle. So let's just say you're getting into, a certain area, you go through, your pec or your lat, or, maybe you're going through your glute or your hamstring or something like that. All we're trying to do is to release the tension in the muscle. A lot of times those muscles, especially the ones that are used a lot and overused, will get tense and tight. And we're just trying to release that tension. When we roll over a muscle like that with a lacrosse ball, a baseball, foam roll, or whatever, we're just releasing tension. Your body's relaxing that muscle. And that's all we're trying to do. A lot of times people would talk about, breaking up knots or adhesions or this and that. And that's not what we're trying to do here. We're really just trying to release neurological tension in that muscle. And that's why a lot of times, you'll come in sore, our athletes will come in sore the next day or 2 days later, and they'll hop on the foam roller and they'll, 5 minutes of foam roll and they feel better. And they're like, man, that's the best thing ever, right? And again, really all it's doing is releasing tension. That muscle is tense and it's releasing tension in the muscle and it's relaxing the muscle. So that's why it feels better, and that's why we want to do that first. We want to relax the muscle before we do anything. So following the soft tissue work, we like to go to some sort of static stretch. So specifically with our higher level athletes, a lot of times, the lat or the pec will get tight, and because again it's overused, it gets beat up, through a spring, summer, and fall season where you're using it a lot. And we got to take care of those muscles, right? Because again, those are used daily and heavily in the game of baseball and softball where you're throwing a ton. So let's use the lat as an example. So we like to use several different lat stretch variations. One of them is called a lean away line stretch, where you're standing, next to a rack or to a door frame or something where you're reaching up and over your head and grabbing that rack or door frame, and then you're pushing away with your bottom hand. And all that's doing is just lengthening that lateral line on the outside. So, it's lengthening the tricep, the oblique, and the lat area. And what we're doing is we're taking big, deep breaths and relaxing that muscle more, right? So the whole point of this static stretch is we are trying to lengthen a muscle group that, again, might be tight or tense. We probably do not want to lengthen a muscle that's already lengthened. So if there's something, that, might already be lengthened, if you have poor posture and you're leaning forward, your posterior shoulder is probably already lengthened. We probably don't want to go through, more lengthening drills when it's already lengthened. So specifically muscles that are tight and tense, we are trying to, breathe into the static stretch to lengthen that muscle tissue before we do anything else. So following the static stretch, after we've lengthened that muscle, then we want to own and establish that new length of the muscle, own and establish the new range of motion, right? So really all that means, we've lengthened the muscle. Now we are going to go through and put some sort of tension on the muscle through that length. So in this case, again, we went lat stretch with our lean away lateral line, and then we're going to go to something similar to a shoulder flexion exercise or maybe a serratus exercise. And shoulder flexion or serratus slides, really all that is, we are taking our hands up and over our head. And if we're doing shoulder flexion, you could be laying on the floor, you could be, your back up against a wall. But all that means is you're taking your arms up in front of you all the way to the top of the wall or all the way to the floor, actively getting through that full range of motion, in the flexion position there. And again, that's just actively lengthening the lat. You're taking your shoulders up into flexion. The lat is lengthening actively as you go through that range. All we're trying to do, again, is put a little bit of tension on the lengthened muscle just to try to establish and keep that length for a little bit. So following that active, then we'll go to some sort of dynamic. So again, this is for both upper and lower body stuff. So, if we're going through, we went through a lat stretch, then we went through a serratus slide and a, shoulder flexion. We've now put some tension through that new range of motion. We're feeling good. We're feeling loose. Now we want to go through a dynamic warm-up, which increases the blood flow to that muscle, and it also is going to excite that central nervous system and get that muscle ready to go. So we could do something like an overhead med ball throw, where we are, standing up against a med ball wall. We have a light med ball, maybe it's 2 or 4 pounds above our head. And, we're simply just taking that ball over our head and throwing it into the wall. So again, that's a dynamic warm-up. We're dynamically moving that muscle group through that range of motion under load. It could be something like a med ball stomp, right? Where you're just getting the ball up and overhead and you're stomping or slamming that ball through the ground. That's going to use, that same muscle group that we just lengthened. So again, for the lat, we're taking it through a static stretch, then we're taking it through a dynamic stretch, and then we're taking it through a dynamic warm-up, right? So that's really what we like to do there. And then following that, a lot of times with our higher level guys, we'll go through some more pre-throw drills where maybe we want to add some additional volume through shoulder external rotation drills. Maybe it's with a band, maybe it's on a table and we're going through it with a light dumbbell. Maybe we want to add some more serratus work where we're trying to strengthen and add some more volume and strength to that serratus, that external rotation, anything like that before the throw. And, a lot of times, again, guys will like to go through a band routine, like J-band routine or something similar, crossover symmetry, which is completely fine. Again, assuming that we are going through, quality movements and we're not just rushing it and yanking around and creating poor patterns. Then again, we'll take guys following, a couple of J-band exercises to the med ball wall, and we'll start to go through some plyo drills. So at base, we like to go through our reverse throws first. So the first one we go through is reverse taps. So depending on the age group, we usually have anywhere from a 1 pound to a 2 pound plyo ball, and we're up against the med ball wall, our backs to the med ball wall, and we're going through reverse taps. So with our shoulders, all we're doing there is our arm is at 90 degrees. We're taking that 1 to 2 pound plyo ball and just nice and easy reverse tapping that into the wall. And all we're trying to do there is to encourage some reactive strength through that shoulder, trying to get the posterior shoulder warmed up and ready to go, ready to play catch. And then following those reverse taps, we'll go through the reverse throws, where we kind of like to use that one more as a patterning. So, you go through a slow motion throw forwards, and then all we're doing is just reversing that motion back and reverse throwing that ball through the wall. So again, this is more of a patterning drill, but we are still getting some posterior shoulder strength from the reverse throw on the way back. So we like to do this one in split stance. A lot of programs will do this from a half kneeling standpoint, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I just like to kill two birds with one stone. So, we go through this split stance where you're actually going through a full throw. You're going through full hip rotation. You're going through full follow through. Again, slow motion forward. And then once we get all the way to follow through, then we will accelerate and reverse throw that ball backwards with backwards chaining from that drill. So this is a pretty good warm up, right? And then of course you grab your ball and you play catch, right? But at that point, the body is ready for the demands that you're about to place on it. And again, this goes for both upper and lower body stuff. So, if we only do an upper body warm up, but we neglect warming up and doing these same steps for our lower body, as you get older, hip internal rotation, hip external rotation, or just hip mobility in general, or thoracic spine mobility, or, ankle dorsiflexion or plantar flexion, things that are down the chain in the lower body will eventually move up the chain and add additional stress to the arm if there's movement lacking there, if the efficiency of that lower body or whatever area is not working properly and it's not moving efficiently, it's going to transfer some unwanted stress to the upper body. So we need to make sure that we are not just warming up the upper body, but we want to warm up the lower body to play catch too. For that reason, we want to make sure that the hips are going through the full range of motion, that they're ready to go, they're ready to accelerate, they're ready to decelerate, and we can take as least amount of stress as possible with those throws. And that's what we're looking to do. So again, these are the things that you should be doing pre-throw, before you warm up, whether you were in middle school, high school, college, professional, the age groups that we train at base, this is the exact routine that we take all of these guys and girls through. So, just a quick recap, soft tissue work, really, the whole point of that is just to release tension in the muscle group. Static stretch, again, we're just looking to lengthen the muscle. Active stretch, after we've lengthened the muscle, then we're trying to actively stretch it to own and establish that new range of motion. Following the active warm-up, then we go to the dynamic warm-up, where we are trying to increase blood flow to the muscles and the muscle group involved, as well as exciting the central nervous system, really just getting the body prepped and ready to go and compete. And then from there, we go through our pre-throwing drills, whether that's, a couple exercises with a J-band routine, shoulder external rotation, maybe it's serratus slides to get, those shoulder blades moving good on the rib cage, things like that. And then we'll go through our reverse taps, reverse throws. And if guys have a specific, plyo pre-throwing routine that we give them, that's pretty much a pretty good warm-up and you're ready to go and play catch. So again, make sure that this happens every single time if you are a high-level athlete, because you want to make sure that you can get the most out of your body and not put additional stress when it's not needed, right? So even if it's a nice, light, easy recovery day and you don't really feel like it, you might be sore, you don't really want to go through a warm up, you want to just grab the ball, take your 20, 25, 30 throws for the day and be done. Even if that's how you feel, going through this exact, you know, plan here is going to help you recover quicker, regain range of motion, take care of those muscles, tissues, ligaments, all of it. And it's going to help you ultimately have a longer career. So that's what I want to talk about for pre-throwing routines. Thanks for listening today.